Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of Black Lightning. A great series finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up after the aftermath of last episode, we have the whole situation of everyone dealing with the news that Jeff is dead. Obviously, he quickly find out that he's not. But the fact is that they believe he is, and obviously each and every one of them wants revenge. Jennifer being like, I should have killed him when I had the chance. And obviously it's a situation of Anissa kind of leading the charge, being like, we need to go after, we need to strike now. Like, we can mourn Dad later, because the fact is, Tobias is going to be coming after us, especially now that we don't have our powers too. So it's like, we need to get our powers back so we can fight back against them. And so everyone's kind of working together, like they're trying to come up with a plan when Gambi eventually is able to track down where the emitter is. But obviously he's got a lot of like guards and stuff like that, each equipped with the energy weapons as well. So it's like, all right, this is going to be our time. We need to kind of plan this out properly and strike. At the same time, we have the whole situation with Jeff obviously being buried alive, because for Tobias, the ultimate revenge of like, no, I'm not just going to straight up kill you. Actually, I am going to let you suffer. I'm going to let you die like this while I'm basically ruling the city, getting everything I wanted in the end. I'm coming out on top while you slowly withering away and dying. Your family already thinks you're dead, and they don't even know that they could save you. And to him, I'm sure like there's poetry to it. So there's that side of things. There's the whole Lopez situation, Chief Lopez, her injecting herself, and Shakur points out like, right, she's got an absorption ability. So I was like, oh, that's not going to be good eventually when she runs into Jennifer and ends up like absorbing her powers, and they end up fighting her. I figured it was going to be something like that. It is interesting that she ended up choosing, like, I guess it was like energy absorption, not just it sounded like, I guess it was specifically that. Maybe it's just like, well, she went there because it's almost like poetic for me to kill lightning with lightning power. So maybe that's what it was. Like, maybe she could absorb any powers, but this is the one she specifically chose just because in her mind it'd be poetic. So, but I think it's so fascinating. Like I said, there's just so many moving pieces to it all. Like, obviously, Jeff, having, been, stuck in a coffin for so long, eventually kind of gives up, because he just prays, like, with my last breath, I pray, God, look after my family, look after my city. I hope that I'm kind of worthy enough to be in your arms, because he did a lot of reflecting, because we find out years ago, when he was still in his early days, he hadn't even become Black Lightning yet, but he had his powers. He accidentally killed a member of the 100 gang, and Gambi covered it up, and it's like, for him it's like, I still see the guy's face, but it's like, no, what you did was self-defense. But for Jeff, it's like, no, I just wish I didn't have these powers. The fact is, I did this. I took a life. And that's where Gambi kind of told him about where his powers could take him. It's like, you could do good. All you need is a code. And he was just kind of like, no. But now we see why Jeff is so stringent about that code, because he has taken a life before, and it weighs on him. He was at a young age. It was an accident, but still, it's like the shame of it weighs on him, especially considering the fact is Gambi covered it up for him. I'm sure that just adds levels to it. But for Gambi, it's like, yo, you're my son. Like, you're the closest thing I have to a son, so I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna look after you. You're my responsibility. Like, especially considering like this person wasn't an innocent person either, but that doesn't make it any better. He still took a life, So maybe in his own mind, like, when it's all said and done, it's like, protect my family, but at the very least, maybe this is for it to come back around like this is because it's rightful, because I took a life. It's only fair that, but for him, it's like everything he did, trying to be good, trying to, it was all for that, making up for that mistake, to live up to that code, to not only make up for the life that he took, but also for the life he couldn't save, his dad's, And while he's dying, and I thought that scene was done so beautifully, how it's like shifting between Jeff as, from 30 years ago to Jeff present day, and his father saying, what happened to me, wasn't on you. The fact is that, but Jeff is like, you were a good man, like, you didn't deserve that. But his dad knows about what he did. But he's like, but you see that right there, like the moment I mentioned that 100 kid you killed, like that right there, that's shame. Tobias doesn't feel that, but you do. That separates you from him. So don't get it twisted and think like you're anything like him. That's what separates you. That's that you are a good person, that you feel the way you do. You feel regret about it. That, his father kind of edging him on, saying that you still got fight, use what you've never used before and kind of get it done, So I thought that was beautiful, and especially like he does snap out of it, but it's like there's no electricity for him to draw upon. But then there's the promethium beneath the ground, beneath Freeland, that he like supercharges him. It's all under all of Freeland, so I guess I wonder, did he completely tap like the vein that's underneath him? I thought that was kind of interesting. I was wondering like whether his dad was referencing like, draw upon the electricity within yourself, like maybe pull from some of like the natural electricity that is his body or something like that. But it's like, no, I think it's like dig deep in and like tap into something inside of yourself you've never accessed before. Maybe you've been too afraid to access before, but now kind of with his dad's permission, with his dad's guidance, and just kind of this time he spent reflecting, he taps into the power like he's never went before, to the point he was drawing upon the promethium. So it's interesting, the thing that was used to help, for one, used to fight metahumans, but also take away their powers in the end, granted it's Val, but also the promethium, for it to be in this moment that supercharges him. So we have that. Which it happened after like Anissa, Gamby, and Grace all went in to attack that facility. Also, it's like, right, you're supposed to be heroes, you were dropping bodies. That first bastard burning alive, you're like, Jesus. Gamby, pow, pow, pow. Grace snapped the dude's neck at 1 second. I was like, oh, well, I guess it's like, well, there's no like time for just playing it nice, because we don't have our powers to just automatically subdue you. So I guess we're skirting the lines a little bit in this case. But Gamby was fortunate enough to be able to get to the device and shut it, destroy it. But in that moment, like, Grace has got her powers, comes in kicking ass. Anissa, first time we get to see her active with the suit and everything, new suit, and even her being like, oh, is it me, or did I just notice my wife being happy to have her powers back? She's like, all right, maybe I missed them, it's like, yeah. Because this is probably the longest time Grace is, this is definitely the longest time Grace has been without her powers. They've been a part of her for so long. But I think hearing what Anissa probably said before about them being kind of a part of her, especially her circumstances, they weren't the best circumstances, but they still are a part of her. So luckily they got out of there. Anissa ended up absorbing a couple of the blasts, and she ends up sending it back at them. The kinetic energy ends up knocking them back, but because that is the thing, especially with the purple and everything, you can't help but think a little Black Panther-ish with the whole, like, how the suit absorbs kinetic energy and everything. But it's more so like just absorbing energy and just kind of sending it back. But Anissa kind of got hurt by it. Like, the suit was able to kind of protect her up to a certain extent, but not fully. And then we get the interesting development of, obviously, like, JJ had gone up to into the sky and the ionosphere and absorbed energy to go toe-to-toe with Tobias and everything. And then the energy came and devoured her, and I was like, whoa. And just the way it was developed, I was like, what? And so I was almost like, wait, is she going to come out looking like OG Jennifer? And she came out not looking like Jennifer? I was like, what was that? I was like, I don't get it. And then I was like, oh, maybe it's still going to be a thing of like the other Jennifer's going to pop up later. So she came back down, and she seemed a little off. She was like, oh, I'm a little dizzy and stuff like that. But then later on, she's like, oh, breathing air, it feels so good. And you're like, wait, what? Like, that's what, it didn't make any sense. You're like, wait, what's going on here? And she's acting weird. And I was like, yeah. And then Jennifer shows up, and it's like, oh, I should, and JJ's like, oh, I should have killed you. I'm like, wait, what? That storyline was, I didn't expect it. Like I said, the entire time I kept thinking like, oh, we're going to have potentially either JJ's going to become Jennifer at the last second, or there's going to be JJ and Jennifer. But no, it turns out it's some living being that basically copied her DNA and it basically hijacked her life. I'm like, wait, what? We're dropping this in the series? Wait, what? What? I was like, that's crazy, because like from the beginning there were hints that like, oh, something's off about her, but I'm like, really, we're dropping this now? Holy crap! And so Jennifer ends up going toe to toe with her, and it turns out it's like, because even Jennifer's like, what are you? And she's like, you think that basically only living things have form. You don't know what it's like to exist without a body. It's like, but I lived it, that, what you call it, the glaze or graze or something, and it's like, that's what you call the ionosphere. I've watched you come and go time and time again, and it's like, I wanted your life, I wanted to live, like, to be able to, and now I came and hijacked your life. So not only, like, which is kind of sad in a way, because it's like, right, that means like everything that JJ's done hasn't been Jennifer. It's just been this thing pretending to be Jennifer, like the whole Uriah thing, which is it makes that even sadder, because it's like, oh, that wasn't even JJ. There's not even a real Jennifer. It's this. I mean, there's also a sad element to it where you're like, well, to be fair, like it did kind of fall for Uriah. It was like, oh, like I get to be a human. Granted, I had to basically kill Jennifer to do it, but still. So I guess the whole like taking on Jennifer's form didn't work the way it wanted to, because it couldn't assimilate, like, because in the process, like, Jennifer's body went kablooey. I don't know why I say kablooey. And luckily, Gambi was able to, but it's like, oh, by like, it's like, oh, it's me. And it's like, luckily it has all of Jennifer's memories, so it was able to fit the mold. But I'm like, that's so crazy. To the point now it's trying to like kill Jennifer. And I love like Jennifer's going through her memories of like everything that she's been through, all that she's lost and everything she's experienced. And that in that moment she ended up being able to fight back against JJ, because it was like, oh, like your life is about over, this is mine now. But then she fights back and her entire body ignites. I guess like she's like summoning all the energy she can. Like maybe in that moment she was absorbing energy from JJ, kind of like, you know, and in that moment she ignites and almost pulls a Matrix when at the end of the first Matrix when Neo goes inside of Agent Smith. It kind of reminded me of that. But I was like, did you destroy her? Did you end up absorbing all the energy that was yours from this thing, take possession of your body? Did you just destroy his body and it's still alive out there in some shape or form, or is it completely dead? I don't know. So, but Jennifer comes out on top. Shakur and the police unit show up. You know, Chief Lopez's task force are the ones used to, you know, ironically, she started this to deal with metas, and they're here stopping her. And she's like, really? You're rolling up with my own task force? And they're trying to stop her because she's like, I need all this power to kill Lightning. But it's like, yeah, but you absorbing all this energy, you're basically going to black out Freeland. It's like your job was about protecting Freeland, but your pride was hurt. And now you're just so consumed by your rage and revenge, you're willing to hurt people in the long run. Luckily, Jennifer shows up in time, and, you know, Jennifer was able to kind of put her down. You know, it's like, yeah, I've had my powers for a while. You ain't as fully charged as I am, especially after I finished kicking my evil doppelganger. Like after I beat her up, it's like, yeah, I'm ready for you. But I think that sets up an interesting thing. Where it's like, well, the powers inside of her are only limited, so she's going to get locked up, but it's going to be sad. I mean, I don't know whether that's supposed to be something where that's like potentially going to set her up potentially in like this continuity of like her potentially being a future villain, her being locked up like that. I don't know. Once again, like there's so much about like her backstory. I don't think anyone ever hit me up about it, but like I don't know if we're supposed to know who her family was, like her brothers or like her husband who had meta powers and killed her husband. I don't know if we're supposed to know that. So there's that. There's the whole situation with them finding out about Jeff still being alive, and then Jeff stops by your boy Tobias, and it's just like, all right, let's duke this out, and comes down to powers and fisticuffs, and he's like, oh, you think you because first Jeff uses a little bit of lightning, but it's not enough to get through his suit, but he supercharges, and it is enough that even Tobias' suit can't protect him from it. So them going toe to toe. He still has the advantage because he just outright just has that pure raw strength, but also because like he's not playing by the same rules as Jeff. Jeff's not trying to kill him; he's just trying to defeat him. And in this moment, just as he's about to throw Jeff outside, I did notice immediately, like, oh, you knocked down the thing that Lala was in. I thought that was going to play a part in the fight. Ultimately, it didn't. But Jeff ended up like zapping him out the window, and he lands on like a spike and gets stabbed. And he's just like, Jeff was trying not to let him die. He's like, no, like stop, Tobias. But he's like, with my final breath, I'm gonna kill you. And Jeff ends up zapping him, and he dies. I was actually shocked at that. I was like, I figured that in the end, Jeff was gonna go, no, I'm gonna defeat you, or at least try and save you, because you're gonna suffer for what you've done. Because obviously, like with Looker and everything, because they bring it up in this episode, her I guess she's testifying now, and now their names are being cleared, so now they can, it's still probably like, they still probably needed time before they could actually go after Tobias, get warrants and all that stuff, because he probably still had enough juice and connections to make stuff go away, but we see him dead, and it's just like, well, Jeff killed someone else, but it's like, it's a complicated thing, because it's like, he didn't want to do this, he was actually trying to not handle things that way, but it's like, maybe in the long run, I mean, granted, it protects his family because like this is the only other like main villain that knew who they were. So this threat that has been, well, a threat for your family for decades is finally done, but still. So there's a lot to chew on in that. Then we get the whole Khalil situation, which I was wondering whether he was going to pop into this or not. But then, like, you know, it's like, well, I got some good news and I got some great news. It's like, well, the good news is Tobias is dead. Because initially, like, Painkiller's like, yo, look, I'm going to like, I'm going to beat the crap out of him. It's like, no, don't. And it's like, oh, how is Tobias being dead good? He's like, I wouldn't be the one to kill him. I was like, I might have to mess you up a little. And it's like, the other news is he found a way to deprogram Khalil and Painkiller. But it's like, cool. But the process means deleting everything about him and the Pierces from his memory. Because I guess because like where it is in his mind and what it uses, like everything about the Pierces is connected to it. So disconnecting this, like, you know, kill order will delete all his memories. And for him, it's like, for Khalil, it's like, I knew I'd give my life for that girl. I just didn't realize I'd end up forgetting her in the process. You know, but for him, it's like, this is necessary. If it means protecting her, if it means protecting that family that he owes so much to, then he has to forget about him. So, especially because Painkiller is like, yeah, like, just kind of cut the strings, like, because, like, you know, because he's like, you'll never stop going after him. It's like, right, I won't. But I'm nobody's puppy, so the moment the string is cut, I'm gonna leave them alone. Like, it's not you know, so for Khalil, it's like, this is kind of a necessary thing, like, no time to waste. And like, it's like, no, the decision's made. So we see at the end him kind of opening his eyes. So it's kind of sad, you know, after everything. It's like, time and time again, like, him and Jennifer's story, they always kind of find and lose each other over and over again. Who knows what their story could be in the future? Like, maybe they can kind of start fresh. It's going to be that complicated thing of like, well, I'll go ahead and kind of spoil it a little bit. There's another show that has a somewhat similar ending. Chuck. I threw it out there. Sorry if you've never seen the show Chuck. It has a similar ending in that regard, which is a very like bittersweet ending in that regard. But it's like, maybe they can fall in love again. But it is that complicated thing of like, oh, I know everything there is to know about you, and you know nothing about me or my family. Even though we have like even though we all know you so well, for better or for worse in certain regards. Is that, you actually almost think of it too, it's almost like the Doctor and River Song's relationship. Like, when she first met him, she knew everything about him and he knew nothing about her because they're meeting out of sync and out of time. So regardless, that was just kind of a sad development. And especially when you had Jennifer all by herself at the party, everyone's celebrating and stuff. You had that conversation between Lynn and Gamby I thought was so interesting, where it's like, for Lynn, it's like, she feels like she always kind of blamed him for Jeff becoming Black Lightning, but it's also like, I should also take the benefit, but I should also have always looked at the fact that you took such good care of him and my girls, and it's like, you know, so, and once again, it's like, there is good that came with it, as well as, you know, other things and their own challenges, but TC goes out there to check on Jennifer, and for her, what hits her the most is like, she's like, what's a little upsetting, and she doesn't get into it too much, but it's like, oh, that's definitely going to lead to some resentment later on, is like, no one in the family could tell that she was a fake except for their dad. Jeff is the only one that could feel that something was off, and that speaks volume. It's like your own mom, your own sister. Your sister's like your best friend, and she couldn't tell something was wrong. Jeff was the only one who could, and no one else. It's like, yeah, she had all your memories and everything. She's like, I'm not trying to blame you, TC, but on some level, she's like, I'm just going to have to deal with it. But it's like, on some level, she's going to resent him a little bit, because it's like, right, I was stuck alone. Like, none of you knew something was off except for Dad. But it's still the thing of like, I think it might still be a thing of, at the end of the day, though, she probably still won't let Jeff off the hook because you still kind of accepted it. So that's going to come with its own issues, especially like when she's going to try like returning to a normal life. That's going to be an issue all on its own. But, you know, it is still kind of a crazy thing to know, like, wait, there's like life out there and they're watching us and stuff like that. So he has the news about Khalil, but she's like, I just don't want to know right now. It's just like, she's just getting back, and it's just like, I can't take any more bad news right now. But back inside the house, like, everyone's talking about, I'm sorry, like, I can't believe that fake fooled us. But it's like, nah, let's forget. You guys forget how to party. And she's just trying to bury the pain, And Jeff comes around and says, that he's retiring more officially. But also, him and Lynn are getting remarried. It's like, for him, he did a lot of self-reflecting about, what he wants in life. Plenty of mistakes where things kind of went wrong, and he wants to make them right. And Lynn, talked about, like, she had said it earlier in the episode, like, when she thought Jeff was dead, she wanted to be able to hold him one last time. And so it's like, right, so especially with them being in therapy and stuff like that, this is their chance to kind of rebuild everything. And the rest of the family about time. But for Jeff, it's like, I'm passing on the torch to you, Wilder, Thunder, and Lightning. You're going to be the defenders of the city. It's like, oh, so you're really retiring to some. And Gammy's like, me too. But from time to time, we could give some advice, or I can always keep myself busy tinkering on stuff, because he was also saying, like, TC is in a position where he can kind of lead the charge now. So kind of passing the torch to the next generation, which we've seen quite a bit of in many different regards. Kind of the new generation of heroes. Obviously, like, Arrow kind of set that up. Sadly, we aren't getting the Green Arrow and the Black Canary spinoff, which is such a bummer. But still, though, that next generation exists somewhere in this continuity, so that's pretty dope and pretty interesting. But it's them celebrating all together as a family again, and it's beautiful, And then we get our stinger at the very end. I guess sometime after Jeff left, before, like, the police probably showed up and dealt with this crime scene and everything. We had your boy Lala waking up. I was like, yeah! I love that he's the stinger of this, at the end of being like, yeah. He's like, someone finally got you. And, it's like, Lala's back. So it's like, yep. So kind of showcasing, like, where the future potentially could have headed. Because that's the thing, like, once again, I never know production stuff. I don't know whether they'd already planned out the entire season before they found out that it was canceled, that they weren't getting season 5. Because you can definitely see some threads of where things could have gone next season. Like the aftermath of, right, oh yeah, I killed Tobias. Obviously, Jennifer dealing with the factors of all that she went through. That thing being in that ionosphere, who's to say it's the only one, that there aren't others out there. So that could be potentially a storyline. Obviously, Lala, who's the next chief? Is it going to be Shakur? Obviously, he now knows that Jeff is black. Like what this new life would have been like. You can definitely see elements of threads they had planned for a season 5. Like, I don't think, because like I said, production wise, they might have already did most of maybe they left like season 4. They wrote it in a way that was kind of like open-ended, or maybe it was already mostly done by the time they got the announcement, so it got rolled out as a final season, but they were writing it was very much like The Magicians. Like, it's written in a way like, hey, this can be a nice send-off while also being set up for other stuff, but it could also just be like, hey, that's why I'm like, the fact that they dropped that JJ thing makes me it's like that was something they had planned for season 5. I don't know whether that's something they moved up because they weren't getting a season 5, or whether did they plan it out to be like that so that it could carry over into a season 5. I don't know. So there's also the whole Khalil situation that has to be thought about as well. Sadly, I just looked it up, and much like Green Arrow Arrow getting its spin-off, sadly, it seems like news broke like a couple hours ago on Entertainment Weekly and comicbook.com about the fact is that the spin-off isn't going through, which sucks, because I was really, especially what they set up in the backdoor pilot and everything. So it's one of those things of like, there's the aspect of, right, it still exists in this continuity, so they can always use it in the future, but it's also the thing of, also the fact is that like every other show is dealing with their own story and characters, so they might be able to pull in some threads from other stuff and continue it, but it's still like there's not enough room to carry not only just their show but other shows on their backs as well. So it's just sad to know, like, we're never going to get any more in the Star City. We're going to get winks and nods, hear about Freeland maybe in other shows and stuff like that, but we're never, like, these characters will exist because Jeff is part of, like, the Justice League. I mean, for all we know, they're kind of setting up a Young Justice situation with, like, the new generation and stuff like that. But it is sad to know. I was hoping that at the very least, like, some torture this could continue with Painkiller. I think, sadly, we are seeing a lot of, like, the CW's, like, Arrowverse kind of winding down to a certain extent, just because, like I said, a lot of these, like, spin-offs aren't going for it. Like, Green Arrow and the Canaries, nor Painkiller. I mean, you just can't, you know, this is ending. We have Supergirl ending this year as well. So I don't know, man. It's sad. Because I'm the type of person that never wants things to end, especially looking at, like, right, this wasn't like a planned ending, at least not done that I'm aware of. It seems like they had plans for season 5 to keep going, and what that story would have been, like I said, with the threads they've set up, you know, that's kind of like the sad thing. But in its own right, it is still like a good conclusion, a good place to leave the story off of, but it still leaves so many things that you would want, you know, the show to kind of get revived. Like, even if it's like at some point later on down the road, if they manage to somehow reboot it for like a one-off, like, limited series or something, I think that'd be dope to kind of finish some of the threads they've set up. But I mean, who knows? Maybe some of these threads could potentially, like I said, get resolved in another show. I highly doubt that, but still. But all I'm doing is, you know, being a little negative in it. You know, it's like I said, it's just sad to see anything come to an end, just because I feel like, you know, four seasons isn't something to sneeze at, but I think the show hadn't even fully hit its stride yet, you know? So that's what kind of, you know, bums me out. Especially with, you know, this being post-Crisis on Infinite Earths and everything, and what that meant for the future, you know, in so many different regards. There was still a lot more story to tell, but, you know... But, you know, like I said, at the very least, I hope we get more threads and references and pulls from Black Lightning that we get to see in the future, you know. Find out about Khalil's situation. Like, a lot of that's going to get resolved off screen or probably just never referenced or talked about again. Like, obviously, we might find out about his circumstances, him and Painkiller, but, like, what their story was going to be for the Painkiller spinoff, we won't know, so... But, you know, despite all that, you know, like I said, despite me kind of being a little negative, I do want to focus on, you know, thanking the cast and crew, everyone that was involved with the show for bringing this awesome show to all of us, especially someone like me, once again, who knew nothing of Black Lightning. I don't even think I'm familiar with Black Lightning, even because I know he's made appearances in, like, animated stuff. I've never seen anything. This was my true first experience with Black Lightning, you know, and his family, his dynamic and everything. And I'm glad and grateful for this journey and, you know, to be able to enjoy this ride with so many fans. So, like I always say at the end of stuff like this, is the fact is I wish the cast and crew and everyone involved the best of luck in their future endeavors. So, once again, it's always that thing of, I never want the recording to end, because the moment it ends, it's all over, and it officially hits me real hard when I start uploading it. That's when you kind of finally say your goodbyes in general, you know. So, but once again, thanks for everything, cast and crew of Black Lightning. This show will be missed, but it will always still have a special place in my heart. Like I said, for as long as the Arrowverse lives on, and even when it ends, it will continue on and always having its own spot and beautiful place in this gigantic universe that is both the DC Comics, but also this DC connected universe that is the Arrowverse. So, but that's really all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.